Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your patience. I know you're all very tired after a long, I would like to call it historic, her story, his story, history is made in this country. It's a country of love. It's a country of liberty and freedom. And I just, as this is in my faith, it's Holy Week. We celebrate Easter, but I also want to honor that it is also coincides this year with Ramadan. And I think it reminds us all that we are all daughters and sons of Abraham. And the sooner we get back to building a garden that's fertile rather than riddled with landmines, the sooner humanity and people with just good hearts are able to walk the earth without fear. So this is the best part right before we're going to have a Grgich Hills Minds to Vines Global Toast to Peace with Jan Hartke, who's over there chatting away. Anyway, but he's a wonderful dear board member. We're talking we talked about the demining, but what comes next? And that is the replanting and the planting of peace through agriculture. Now, how does that work? Well, I walked my first minefield, as I mentioned, in 2000. January 2000, and I've never looked back. I truly have walked the minefields of the world. But demining is half of it. The regenerative agriculture, smart agriculture, climate smart agriculture. 27 years ago when I started Roots of Peace, I wouldn't know what it meant to say climate smart agriculture. I wouldn't know what regenerative agriculture is. But the earth is speaking to us. And as we can see these beautiful, beautiful cherry blossoms, pink cherry blossoms blooming, if we just lift the veil, the earth is speaking to us in a most sweet and beautiful way and the most powerful way. And I think, as Goey said, it's speaking to us with love. Please remember us. We're the earth, and we produce the most beautiful cherry blossoms instead of landmines. So our first guest is one of my dearest friends for the last 27 years, when I took her father to a minefield. Now, mind you, it was her father. She's one of the daughter of the most famous American families, her mother Tatiana, and her father Milenko Grgich, entered in 1976, again, the year I graduated from high school. This little Croatian immigrant was working at Chateau Montelena, and he snuck a bottle of wine into the Paris tasting with all the most savvy French noses who knew wines. And when they unveiled it, lo and behold, Mike Grgich and Chateau Montelena Chardonnay. She can tell the story much better than I. But when Mike heard there were landmines, he said, I want to go see. I grew up there. There were 1.2 million landmines, UXOs, and cluster munitions shortly after the Balkan War. And I can say today that Croatia is one of the top tourist destinations in the world. So is peace possible? I believe it is. And I think we need to uphold Croatia and ripple it out to the other 60 nations and cultivate peace through agriculture. This is about, again, as we close this session, it's what mothers pass on to their daughters, mothers pass on to their sons. Ambassador Brandstad, you to your son Eric, Jeannie to your daughter Julia, and also Milenko to you, Violet. And another beautiful legacy of a father passing something on to their child is the daughter of Ted Turner. Shortly after I made the Minds to Vines Global Toast to Peace, he stood in New York at the UNA USA and offered $1 billion to make the earth better. And part of that wish was to eradicate landmines. Now that's 27 years ago coming up, but his daughter took that legacy. She could have had a cushy, wonderful life. She is a champion, president of the CEO of the Turner Foundation. On the board of directors, they had to create a UN foundation because they didn't know what to do with Ted's $1 billion. So nobody had ever given the B word. And they created the foundation of which you serve on many, many boards. So thank you so much for being here. And then last but not least, my sister in spirit, Elizabeth Whitlow. And Elizabeth is the CEO of Regenerative. Organic Alliance. And again, thank you all so much for joining us. So really, really appreciate it. I think we'll start with you, and why would one of the most prominent wineries in the world get into regenerative agriculture? Is it profitable? What's the story?
Yes, it is actually profitable. So I know, well, let me tell you a little bit about my father's story. He came from Croatia. He suffered through World War II, managed to escape narrowly with his life, and came to America because he heard it was a land he could achieve his dreams. And he did achieve his dreams in Napa. He actually founded Grgich Hills Estate along with our partners, the Hills Brothers family of the coffee family in San Francisco in 1977. Made Napa Valley famous by making the world's most famous Chardonnay and set Chardonnay as a national trend. But he always wanted to farm naturally. He always wanted to have complete control over his grapes, because he felt that without the best quality grapes, there's no way on earth you can make a great wine. You can take great grapes, totally ruin them, or make a mediocre wine, but you cannot make great wine from mediocre grapes. And the best way to do that, he found, was to farm naturally and to have your own vineyards. So we actually started farming organically in 2000. It was my cousin Ivo Jeramas. He came from Croatia in 1986 and was very passionately inspired. Then in 2003, we had a vineyard that needed to be replanted, essentially. We were told, this is this vineyard planted in 1959. It's got red leaf violets. You got to pull it up. And my cousin happened to hear about biodynamic farming, started biodynamic farming, and magically was able to not eradicate the virus, but to have it coexist. And then we found that biodynamics didn't completely solve all of our vineyard situation, I suppose, and so we started regenerative organics several years ago. And I don't think I've ever seen my cousin more excited, because the more we practiced, the more he would say, oh my gosh, this is working, that's working. It was just so amazing to us to be able to have not just more profitable in the short run, because many people think, oh, this is so expensive, waste your money. My cousin's actually a mechanical engineer. He will happily pull out all the financials for anybody who wants to start regenerative organic. And we have case studies. Napa Green is a program founded in Napa, and we're case study number 1. And so it can be profitable. Grapes, you might hear that they start getting pulled out when they're 15, 20, 25 years old. That'd be like if your 15, 20, or 25-year-old child suddenly died for no reason at all. It is not the average lifespan of a grape. It's just like a human. 80 or even 100 years old, like my father. He managed to make it over 100 years old until this last December. But we have some vineyards that are over 130 years old because they're farmed naturally. Mm-hmm. And the older they get, the better quality they produce, the more complexity, the more the wine that you make from them, you want to just keep drinking and you don't want to stop. And so it's not just vineyard replanting is really super expensive. And so for us, the idea of being able to have those old vineyards of better quality and then also have a much lower cost of goods, it sort of explains why our wines are not more expensive than they actually should be. But I don't know why I'm saying that. Anyway, sorry, I think we're keeping you guys from the wine reception.
No, but your
this
generosity
is something that we're very
spirit.
Passionate about.
And so, yes, we're all slightly passionate women up here, so we promise we'll get onto it. But I just would like to give a shout out. The generosity of the spirit of the Grgich Hills family and Violet, and as carrying the torch from her father. The last fundraiser that he had was for Roots of Peace, and he showed up at the Festival of the Bells, which we hope you all come to in November. But all the wines that were donated at the World Food Prize to 800 people, generously donated by Violet, and also the wines you'll be tasting tonight, donated personally by Violet Grgich. So, Živeli Tashakor. Laura Turner Seydel, I don't think I properly said your name out loud, and it is a name that I have met you many times on the global stage, always such a passionate supporter of the environment. And I recently saw a film called Kiss the Ground, and the sequel, if you haven't seen it, it's called Common Ground, and it is extraordinary. What was it like to be the producer of Kiss the Ground, and tell us about Common Ground?
Can I start at the beginning?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We all did.
You told the people in the room, the ones that are left, so thank you for hanging with us, and thank you, obviously, Ambassador, and Jeannie and Julia for inviting us to be here. But if Ted were here, he might tell you a little story. When he was 9 years old, he read a National Geographic magazine, and it was about the plight of the American buffalo, bison, and that they were systemically eradicated, and that was associated with the indigenous people genocide that happened at that time. And so he was this young, impressionable boy, and he kind of stored that pain away in the back of his head. And when he, in the 70s, really got started his media empire, and he became successful, he bought a piece of property in South Carolina, and he bought 3 bison. And, but he had bears and mountain lions and rattlesnakes and opossums and squirrels, and he had a menagerie. He loved animals ever since he was a young boy. And so he just, started on this mission to bring back nearly extinct wild species to America. And he kept collecting these properties, and a lot of them were cattle ranches, and they were overgrazed. Seriously, severely overgrazed, just like most of the grasslands in the world are in serious decline. Soil health is never stagnant. It's either improving or declining. And the more you denude it, the hotter it gets, the drier it gets, the less there is for animals, wildlife, and domesticated to eat. And it's just this downward spiral. But anyway, so Dad took the cattle off and put the bison on, and bison have this tendency to graze intensively, and then they move on, and the land rests. And that's how things went in Africa with the wildebeest, with the Great Migration, and with the bison, 30 to 50 million strong. They would graze intensively, fertilize, break up compacted soil with their hooves, and move on. And we have gotten it all wrong with the way we've grazed our domesticated animals around the world, is that the land is constantly grazed and it's never rested. And so, or very rarely, and only 4% of all meat production in the United States is regenerative. The rest of it is kind of the best practices for, livestock in feedlots and et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, it's given the family so much joy to put bison back on the plates of Americans in this country. It's very nutritive. But on the Turner ranches about 5 years ago, I was shocked when I attended my first Soil Health Academy training with a consulting group called Understanding Ag. So that's Dr. Alan Williams, Gabe Brown, Ray Archuleta, and Alejandro Carrillo. And we went out in the field with our 14 ranch managers, and what I learned was remarkable. I thought it was healthy, compared to a lot of our neighbors. It looked really good. But what I came to understand is there were so many bare patches, and the native plant species had declined, the bird species had declined. We didn't have that many pollinators. When you did the soil temperature test, it was like, even though the air temperature was 80 degrees, the soil temperature was 140 degrees, which means we were pasteurizing the life in soil. That's what it does. And it dries up. It dries up and creates 15-degree hotter land, and it makes the land very much susceptible to drought. So we started grazing our animals in a very specific way. We moved them more often, and damn if it didn't work. More native plant species, the seeds were laying in the ground, waiting for the right conditions. Sometimes 50 to 100 years, these seeds are dormant. And then you get more pollinators, more beneficial bugs, healthier, deeper roots, drought resistance, flood resistance, and more profits, net profits per acre, more food production, per acre. And it's just like, I'll give you one example. We have a 70-acre center pivot that was alfalfa to feed the bison in the winter months. And we grazed the bison around that center pivot, the young bison, and the next thing you knew, when we started 2 years ago, there was 4 inches of topsoil, and we grew it by 10 inches in 2 years. And scientists, until all this new data that's coming out, said that that's impossible. It takes hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. And I could go on, but I'm gonna turn it back to you. But it is a miracle of miracles, win-win-wins out the wazoo, and something that we need to grow and expand as quickly as we can.
Yes. We just have to. Yeah, thank you. And please see Kiss the Ground. It's on Netflix.
Kiss the Ground on Netflix, and Common Ground is in theaters across the country. AMC Theaters is partnering the week before Earth Day, so Earth Week, it's Earth Month, every day is Earth Day. But AMC in 150 cities across the country will be screening it, and also Amazon just purchased those 2 films and will be live streaming in June, I think. So be looking for it. But it tells the tales that we all need to hear, and how do we focus on the soil health, and achieve more profits for farmers and ranchers, and carbon drawdown, and drought resistancy, and healthier animals, and healthier us.
So we are Marin County, Napa County. Now we're on to Sonoma County, and we will hold a screening for you somewhere in the San Francisco Bay Area. So hope you all come. Now, last but not least, our finale, incredible woman. I've had the privilege and honor of being on several panels with you. Each time I'm inspired about her passion, her intelligence, and every time I try to find her, she's somewhere different in the world. So we're really very fortunate to have Elizabeth Whitlow, the Executive Director, Regenerative Organic Alliance.
Thank you.
And that's the ROA of the ROI on Soil and Soul.
There we go. It's
Please.
So great to be here. Thanks to all of you for sticking around. Looks like we have still full attention. Pretty full house, and really delighted and honored to be here and have this conversation and just imagine the possibilities of a future when we can combine the regenerative organic practices with these lands where you are demining, Heidi, and just working in other communities around the world. The Regenerative Organic Alliance was founded by Patagonia, mostly known for clothing, but they also have a little known division that is for food, because Yvon Chouinard, the founder, said many years ago, people are going to eat 2 or 3 times a day mostly. They're not going to buy jackets every day. So let's find a way to get to solutions through food. And so Patagonia was one of the main founders, the Rodeo Institute, and Dr. Bronner's. And they came together and they created this standard for regenerative that they built on organic, and they layered in all these other criteria through these 3 lenses: soil health, animal welfare for livestock operations, and social fairness. The social fairness component really touches on a lot of points we've been talking about today, and that is about gender equality and farm workers and the issues that farm workers face every day as they try to farm in a changing climate. Farmers are at the front line of climate change, and changing climate is really making it hard to farm. And the cool thing, as Laura just so eloquently described, is when we focus on the soil and the health of the soil, everything changes. Everything changes because it doesn't take long to build healthy soil. There's some core principles that the men she was mentioning earlier are really well known in the regenerative ag circles. Gabe Brown is the poster man of the movement, in fact, and are showing what can be done when you apply these principles of building healthy soil. And that is that you keep the ground covered, you keep living roots in the ground. You bring in diversity, you practice holistic grazing and bring in animals to bring in the benefits that animals provide. And you minimize the tillage of that land. And by doing this, by building soil, you create the conditions for a farm to thrive and to be profitable and to retain moisture. For every 1% increase in soil organic matter, the land is able to absorb 27,000 more gallons per acre. And so imagine that when there's a flood. Violet, let's talk about atmospheric rivers. Okay, 8 inches or something, how many inches?
It was about 8 inches in one day in one of our vineyards.
8 inches in one day. Where we live, we normally get about 50 inches a year. Over in Napa, maybe 30, 40.
30, 40, yeah.
8 inches in a day is gonna decimate a farm. All the soil's gonna run right down into the river and run right down the road. All that farmer's natural capital says bye-bye. But when you're applying regenerative practices, you're keeping the soil covered and you're building healthy soil, the soil holds on to it. It's like a giant living sponge, and it just absorbs the water. And so then in times of drought or extreme heat, it's able to really create the scenario for resilience for those plants so that they can access the moisture. And the soil microbiome doesn't get wiped out and decimated because it's so dry and hot that it basically bakes all the living entities in the soil. There's more living beings in 1 teaspoon of soil than there are humans on the planet. And we've only identified about 15% of those living organisms. So we have a long way to go. Soil science is really emergent, and we're learning every year more and more about the benefits that having healthy soil brings to the food, to the farm, to the plants, and really helping make healthier humans because the food is more nutrient dense and the plants are more resilient. So those are some of the core tenets of our program are in the soil health. And I'm not sure if we really only have 2 minutes left, but if we do, we're not going to get into any further discussion.
And we just want to say we're going to be upstairs afterwards, and Violet will be leading us in a Minds to Vines Global Toast to Peace. So I think the takeaway here is soil and soul. Let's demine the soil. Let's demine the soul from the heart of America. Let's replenish it with love, and let's get the good seeds planted that are profitable. We have a little gift from Roots of Peace for Ambassador Brandstad. This is black pepper that was cultivated in the former battlefields in Vietnam. Roots of Peace has trained over 10,000 Vietnamese farmers. And mind you, just like the best wines grow in Napa, Sonoma Valley, the best pepper comes from Quang Tri, Vietnam. So Morton Gotthelf was in the war in the 1960s. He was a pilot flying the injured out, and he wanted to give back. So this is Morton Bassett black pepper, and on the back, the logo of Roots of Peace. So peace through agriculture. I ask you to hashtag, and let's use the tools of social media to get this out of the U.S. Institute of Peace. Roots of Peace Women, hashtag Roots of Peace Women, hashtag Vax Roots. How about that? Vax Roots. Let's do hashtag Vax Roots, and hashtag, of course, World Food Prize. Because without Michelle and her dream of doing this 10 months ago, you, my dear, have turned 10 weeks. What am I saying? 9 months to give birth to a baby. 10 weeks. It was early January. So we hopefully are harnessing change, and thank you to all. And the last great gentleman ambassador, I'd like to stand up. I still can see that far at 66 years young. Ambassador George Moose, the former chair of the board of the World Food, right here of the U.S. Institute. Ambassador, thank you for making this happen. Thank you for making this happen. So if you have any other questions, since are we out of time? I think it's time for the cocktail party, the Minds to Vines toast to begin. So please join us for Grgich Hills upstairs. I've donated my book called Breaking Ground, and it has the foreword by Her Majesty Queen Noor. And you'll read how it starts from a little idea and grows to here we are today. God bless America, and God bless the whole wide world.